Hey, Brian, do you want to get started?
Yeah, let's do it. Right. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join us tonight. Today, we have a very special event, a special guest, Chris Kyra. Before I introduce Chris, let me walk you through how the night will go. So we'll start off with our panel discussion on leadership. And we're mainly trying to answer a few questions. What does leadership mean? What does it mean to be a leader? Why is it important to develop leadership skills, and how that can help you in your career? And different ways that you can acquire those skills, especially during these times. That's going to be the first 35 minutes. And then I'll pass it off to our very own Harry Zhang to talk about the resume building workshop. And in addition, we have a surprise for those who stick around till the end. And sorry, I'm not allowed to say what it is, but you'll get to see. So yeah, that being said, let's get started. Chris, thank you very much for being here. Just a little background. Chris is a founder, entrepreneur, ex-McKinsey engagement manager, Rotman MBA. I mean, so many credentials right there. Such an amazing journey that I can't do justice to. So yeah, Chris, would you like to tell us more about yourself? You're muted, sorry.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks so much, Brian. Yeah, so excited to be here and see lots of names on the screen here. Really excited. So thanks for having me. Yeah, Brian, I think touched on a lot of the big pieces, but I'll just walk you through a bit more of the journey of where I've come from. So going way back to 2005, I was working for one of Canada's large telecom companies. It's called Bell Canada. That was really my first exposure to the world of consulting. There were a few consulting firms working there, as there are with most large firms. It was the first time I really learned about that industry. So I set my sights on that, seeing the kind of work they were doing. The travel was very exciting for me in the early days. And so I did my MBA here in Toronto, Canada at the Rotman School of Management with a focus on consulting and generally strategy. I had the opportunity to actually work at more consulting firms than the average person. I had a summer experience at A.T. Kearney. I decided to go into the hiring cycle again, and I landed in Accenture with their strategy practice in 2008. And then after about 2 years there, had the opportunity to interview at McKinsey & Company, where I was from 2010 until 2016. So yeah, three different firms, three very different firms. I think it gave me great perspective on what's different between them and how how they can all function kind of in this world of serving clients in very different ways. My focus while I was at McKinsey, three big things I focused on. Number one was around tech, telecom, and media. That was kind of the industry that I worked mostly in. In terms of a function, I worked in marketing for the most part, especially digital marketing. And then kind of on the side, I did two things. Number one was recruiting. I was the lead for MBA recruiting in Toronto for 2 years of my time at McKinsey. And then I was also involved with a lot of not-for-profits in Toronto. Most consultants are. And that was a very rewarding time. Leaving McKinsey, I actually did live in Asia for about 2 years. I lived in Shanghai and in Singapore, so I can say 大家好 and 我会说一点中文. But that's full conversations I can't do, but I did learn enough to have some friendly conversations. Incredible experience. Back to Toronto, and I've been a professional coach for people looking to get into consulting, as well as at the University of Toronto. I'm the consulting career coach there. I've been in that role for about 4 years, helping MBA students reach their consulting goals. So yeah, a little bit of a longer version of what Brian really well summed up.
Wow, thank you, Chris. That sounds like an amazing journey. I mean, yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. So as I mentioned, today we'll be discussing a few things, mainly focusing on the topic of leadership. And, we're hoping to leverage your extensive background to better understand, what it means to be a leader. What are the different leadership skills? Why is it vital to develop those leadership skills? And finally, how to develop those during this time. So, one of the first questions that I think our audience is interested in today is, what does it mean to be a leader? And to be honest, I don't know myself. I mean, we hear this word leadership thrown around quite a lot, and I haven't heard a concrete definition yet. So what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, you're so right, Brian. If you kind of Google what is leadership, you'll get millions, tens of millions of answers. And, no one can really say with, I think, a definitive air what is leadership, but I think we should dive into the science and the data. And it's a recent McKinsey study. It was done in 2015. They surveyed about 81 companies around the globe and distilled from that, they tried to understand what makes a great leader, and they tested about 20 dimensions across all of these organizations, and 4 of them are responsible for 89% of leadership effectiveness. So that's what I've grounded myself in, and I want to share those 4 with you. I'll go through all 4 quickly. I'll let you know what they are, and then I'll just say a word or two about each one. Number 1 is being supportive of other people. Number 2 is to aim for specific results. Number 3, you need to get perspectives or views that are different from your own. And number 4, you need to solve problems effectively and efficiently. So just a word or two about each one. Being supportive of others, it seems in a lot of, especially university culture, sometimes it's a me or them atmosphere. If I succeed, others won't. And if they succeed, I won't. The opposite really is true in the real world. By supporting others, you're building a network of people that will push your interests as much as you are helping them with theirs. So very critical to help others as they're helping you. Number 2 is about being results oriented. And so when you're thinking about a plan or a strategy, or you're building an approach to solve a problem, your end result should be some kind of quantifiable, a measurable result. A great example of that, something you can do a bit of research on later, the Pareto Principle. Pareto is P-A-R-E-T-O, otherwise known as the 80-20 rule. It says that 80% of the answer will come from 20% of the work that you do, and the converse is true, that the rest of the answer, 20%, comes from 80% of the work. And so naturally, you want to focus on that 80% that will get you the biggest part of the answer. And so the results are the most important. Number 3 was about different perspectives from your own. And I think this clearly ties into the first point about being supportive of others. Each one of us has a bias or a way of looking at the world that cuts off very important input into our solutions. By gathering input from others, it'll expand your view and ensure that you're seeing a problem from many different angles. I can share that McKinsey is the #1 recruiter of non-business advanced degree people, and that would be PhD and master's degree students who aren't business students. They do that for exactly this reason. If you have a PhD in biochemistry and a master's in English literature in the same room, the answers you will get will just be so much more varied and deep than you would if you have 5 or 6 of the same people with the same training. Lastly was about this concept of solving problems effectively and efficiently. I think that's at the core of what we all strive to do with, for example, case interviewing, is to find an approach that solves a problem effectively, meaning it solves it completely. Efficiently means it does it in good time with good progress. And so that's something certainly that good leaders show. Those 4 skills, I think if each one of us can work on those, that accounts for 89%. The other dimensions they tested, there's 16 other dimensions. Those account for only about 11% of the rest, the Pareto Principle in action. And so really focusing on those 4 for me has become my definition of leadership, Brian.
Amazing. Thank you for that. So just to recap, 4 points: supporting others, problem solving, solve problems efficiently, seeking diverse inputs, and
aiming for
results oriented.
Yeah.
So metrics and aiming for results. Okay. So I mean, I was going to ask you about the rest of the skills that make up a good leader, but I think, you mentioned 89% lies in those 4, so that's probably a good start for anyone wanting to.
And I'm happy to share the article where these results were put forward. You'll see the other dimensions, and they're all things that we would assume would make great leaders, like motivating others, making great decisions, facilitating groups and teams. Those are all important, I think. But yeah, I think starting with these 4 is a good way to get going.
Amazing. So I guess it's kind of clear now what it means to be a leader and what the different skills are. But another question is, why is it important to actually focus on these skills? I know like our audience members here are probably mostly concerned about, maybe finding a good job or their career. So yeah, how does leadership skills factor into that? And, post or throughout your career, not just for interviews, not just for recruitment. Why is it important to be a good leader, Chris?
Oh yeah, great question. And yeah, again, it just sounds like something that's right to do. Of course, I want to be a great leader, but unless you really think about what it means in different parts of your life, and for me, as always trying to structure and answer, I think that there's effects in both your personal and your professional life of being a great leader. Given a lot of us here are looking for careers in professional context and consulting, let's talk about that first. Leadership plays a role in every corporation and organization in the world, no doubt about it. Whether you're with a multinational organization with hundreds of thousands of employees, or you're with a two-person startup that just got off the ground, a one-person startup, if you're alone, leadership's going to play a role there. So, in terms of where it will get you, I think those four dimensions we talked about are going to be critical to moving through your career. Each one of them will play a more important role at different stages in your life, but I think every firm is looking for that today. It was famously said by The Economist, a well-known publication, that McKinsey is a leadership factory. And if McKinsey, I think, places value on it, they are advising clients on their own values. They are also going to build that respect for leadership in other firms. So I think very important to develop it in your professional life. On your personal life, not to get too personal, but I think there are many times in our lives where leadership plays a role. For example, if you're negotiating for a new home, or you are trying to make a really tough decision that'll affect your personal life, leadership skills about being able to structure a problem or having a support network around you of people that you have also supported in the past is something that great leaders do, and it has positive effects in their personal life as well. So it sounds like the perfect plan is really to just become a great leader in life, but easier said than done. There can be some real challenges.
Yeah, that makes sense. So both professional and personal benefits to being a good leader. Mm-hmm. I couldn't help but hear McKinsey there, and I apologize. I'll want to zoom into that because a lot of our audience here are aspiring MBB consultants. So can you tell us first a little more about your role as an engagement manager at McKinsey? What did that involve, or what did you do?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So for context, engagement manager is a role at McKinsey. It's usually you're at McKinsey about anywhere from 3 to 5 years when you become an engagement manager. Your role is the on the ground, so the lead of the team that is working there every day on a client site. You start usually as a business analyst if you're out of an undergrad program, into an associate, if you're out of an advanced degree like an MBA, and then engagement manager. So my role as an engagement manager was leading teams mostly with tech, media, and telecom companies. And, just to maybe walk you through a typical day of what I would do, as a first step, every McKinsey team around the world, it would be a fun graphic to see it happening in real time around the planet. They get together for a morning session to say, what are the goals of the day? And the engagement manager leads that conversation. So goal setting, very important. One of those 4 areas of leadership about being results oriented, leading that kind of conversation. Say sometime in the early morning, I have a client that I work shoulder to shoulder with. So that's my peer client. There is one person dedicated to my project, and I meet with that person daily. It's about making sure that what the McKinsey team is doing is transparent to them. And more importantly, that they're bought in, that they believe and agree with the path that we're taking. Because the best end result of a project with a strategy firm, any strategy firm, is for the client to be in front of the senior leadership talking about the ideas that you are proposing. Second best is if a McKinsey person has to be in front of the senior client delivering that message. Coming from within the organization is the greatest way to make change happen. And so if you have your peer client on board, you will get much better results at the end of a project. And that starts with daily meetings with them. After that, usually lunches with prospective new clients. As an engagement manager, you're also looking to identify new areas where McKinsey can help a client. So over lunch, I might talk to a client about what's on their mind, what keeps them up at night, and what they might want some help with. Afternoon, interesting time here. We often will have a problem-solving session. Famous acronym in McKinsey, a PSS. It's a time when only the McKinsey team, so an internal team, gets together, and one topic at a time, the whole team comes together and puts their full brain power towards solving each topic. This is where McKinsey becomes the most flat in hierarchy. In terms of, it doesn't matter if you're a partner, a senior partner, a business analyst, your opinion has the same weight in these problem-solving sessions. It's one of the 15 values that McKinsey has, and you can find that online on their recruiting and other websites. Their mission and values is about the obligation to dissent. It simply means if you believe something should be done differently, you speak up. And it's these problem-solving sessions for me that really brought that to life. So we spend about 2.5 hours solving problems together as a team, not unlike a case interview. A lot of you, I'm sure, are prepping for case interviews now. That one-on-one interaction you're having with the interviewer is trying to replicate a internal problem-solving session. Client has a problem, and you're going to solve it together in a closed room. And then kind of end of day, my job to make sure that my team is feeling good, that that there's not too much stress, that people aren't going to be working too late. Usually if a project's going, as they say, off the rails, it means not going well. It means that the engagement manager is not doing their job usually, because they are the ones that ensure that the work is distributed evenly and that clients are informed of what's happening. So I'll do a check-in at the end of the day, what needs to be done tonight and what can wait for tomorrow. That's a really important test to do with every aspect of work, because people will burn out working until 1 or 2 or 3 a.m. every night trying to impress the team when they've just joined. That's not a recipe for long-term success. You will burn out and start to resent the role. So, setting expectations, and then, I'm usually in another city than my home city. So at that point, it's off to a restaurant, trying to maybe sample some of the local cuisine, and then back to my hotel for maybe another hour or two of work. But that's really an engagement manager, is kind of holding the reins, trying to make sure that the project is moving in the right direction. I did it mostly with tech telecom companies. I can share some of the names there, since they're older projects, companies like Time Warner and Comcast, and then moving over to companies or areas like financial services and working more in marketing and digital topics. So a few little tidbits there.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. I can definitely see how the 4 leadership aspects fit in throughout the entire day there, problem solving, setting results, seeking different inputs.
That's right.
Just curious, were you involved in recruitment at all at McKinsey, or?
Very heavily, It had such a big impact on me going through MBA, and I, at both Accenture and McKinsey, I became the MBA lead for my local office, which is something every consultant takes on at some, or no, I should say that there's always a consultant in that role, and I did that at both firms. I really enjoyed it.
And a follow-up question, as a recruiter, do you explicitly look for leadership skills in applicants, and how do you maybe identify those?
Oh, great question. Absolutely is the short answer, one-word answer. But to expand on that, McKinsey, for those of you who've done a bit of research about their recruiting process, there are 4 dimensions that they are looking for in candidates and that they test for in all interviews. And one of those 4 is very simply leadership. And they use a lot of the data they've collected, like the 4 that I've talked about here tonight. You'll see that there are that is what they will be looking for in the leadership bucket. The other areas that you can find, but I just want to let you know what they are: entrepreneurial drive, personal impact, and problem solving. But leadership, I think if there is one firm that is really known for its leadership, it is McKinsey and Company. The Economist, I think, as I mentioned earlier, had that quote about them, and they are the ones, McKinsey, who will tell you the first thing that we value in someone is a great leader. The way they test for that specifically is with what they call a FIT or a PEI, personal experience interview question. And so the questions can have lots of different forms. The word leadership almost always appears in there, but something like a time when you felt challenged as a leader, or a time when you felt at your proudest as a leader. A time, and doesn't always have the word leadership in it. For example, tell me about a time when you worked with someone to achieve their goal. That could very well be a leadership story that they're looking for. So yeah, the FIT and PEI portion of the interview, I'll share with you one data point from my time at McKinsey and the recruiting team, is that the number one reason a lot of people were not able to move on to the next round often wasn't the case interview. People prepare for that so much and they get really good at it. And it does take a lot of preparation. It's critical to do it. But the FIT is often where people don't focus, and that's where they test for leadership, personal impact, and entrepreneurial drive. And all three of them are equally important as being a good case interviewer. So I do recommend you spend a lot of time getting your stories right and matching them to the values of the firm that you're interviewing at.
Wow, so I'm getting a sense that from my talk with you so far that leadership is very important for various reasons. I mean, simply if you're looking for a job at McKinsey, that's a big enough reason. But Chris, can you share with our audience maybe a few ways that you think they could work on developing their leadership skills, especially during these tough times?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that there's three ways that, I'm just going back to kind of education theory here, how do people learn things? And I think leadership's no different. We learn things by learning the theory behind them. We learn things by actually doing them. And then we learn things by having mentors and people to help us. So, with the theory side of it, that's, for better or for worse, that's how the traditional education system is set up. You sit in a classroom, you listen to someone tell you how something works, you write it down, memorize it, and then try to play it back in a test or an exam. Important, and I think it does have a role to play, and we all need to do it. So that's classes, studying, and so on. But moving on to the second one, I think increasingly educational organizations are recognizing that you learn something best by doing it. And so that's an experiential type of learning, an experience-based learning, where you are actually doing the thing you want to learn. With that comes mistakes, and mistakes are excellent learning opportunities, and there's no better place to make mistakes than in a learning environment where you are expected to take those learnings and build your knowledge with them. The last area I think that we learn from, and maybe it's related to learning by doing, but I think it's important enough to be separate, is to have mentors and people that will shepherd you or help you to learn from mistakes that they made in the past so that you don't repeat them. Mentors come in all forms. At McKinsey, there were several mentorship programs in place, several formal ones. So you'll be assigned a mentor, someone more senior than you, only by a level or two, who can help you kind of get off your feet and start on the right process. But I would say even more important than the formal mentorship programs at McKinsey were the informal ones. And those come from just clicking, as they say, forming a relationship with someone from a team that you worked on or a conference that you went to, and saying, I really value the way that you do something. I would like to learn how you do that. That mentor relationship is very easy to talk about. It's in a company like McKinsey, you can simply say to someone, I'd love if we could form a mentorship relationship. The mentor themselves gain something from that. You learn something better when others learn from you. As a mentee, the person being mentored, equally important, of course. So yeah, from theory, from doing things, and from finding great mentors, I think that's kind of the three paths to learning leadership really well.
Amazing. Theory, doing things, and finding mentors. Doing things, I mean, that's a little vague. What does that look like? Like working on projects, maybe entrepreneurial experience? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't think of many things that if you focus on the leadership aspect of that thing, it can teach you. So I think being in an entrepreneurial capacity is a no-brainer. As an entrepreneur, you are gaining skills across a wide variety of topics. And I can say that from firsthand experience. I'm on to my second entrepreneurial experience now from the last about 4 years since I left McKinsey and Company. And yeah, you're learning everything from, the nitty-gritty details, kind of operations focused, where you're running things, making sure things are moving smoothly, up to the kind of higher level strategic, what is our next big move to, if you are a retail-based location, where will our next location be? People topics, of course, as well come up in entrepreneurial life, how to develop others. So I think being an entrepreneur, excellent way to learn how to be a leader. But that said, I think, it's not the only way. And what you'll see if you're reading literature about what companies value, it's this concept of, it's a play on words, being an intrapreneur. So entrepreneur, classic word, starting your own business or company. Being an intrapreneur means being in a much larger company usually, but having the mindset or the motivations of an entrepreneur, someone who starts things on their own and who leads things, identifies opportunities, can play lots of different roles in the course of a day. And so if you are an entrepreneur at a company, they're valuing that much, much more, and so much actually that McKinsey used to have they have always had 4 dimensions that they tested on. I mentioned them earlier, but entrepreneurial drive is one of them today. It wasn't one of the dimensions about 6 years ago. It switched from achievement, it used to be called, to entrepreneurial drive. And the reason they did that was, for the last maybe 50 or 60 years, McKinsey would lose candidates. They would not join McKinsey because they would join BCG, another great firm and lots of opportunities there, but a great rivalry that's lasted for the better part of about 50 years. But looking forward in the last 10 years, McKinsey lost more candidates, not to BCG, not to Bain, but to 5 or 6 person startups, Silicon Valley and other parts of the world. And of course, McKinsey, started to tune into that and say, we need this great talent. And what we're finding is that people want to have that entrepreneurial experience early because, I can always join McKinsey when I'm older, they'll be around, it's a safer job. I want to take some risks now and have some fun and see where this could go when I'm younger. Great attitude, I think, but McKinsey needed to build that into their value proposition for candidates to say joining McKinsey is like joining a startup. And I'll say that it really is. You are constantly looking for your next cool project. You are building things within the firm. You're looking for opportunities in every corner. So yeah, I think that whether you're in a large firm or an entrepreneur yourself, leadership is going to be something that you'll learn by doing all those things.
Amazing. Thank you, Chris. So Chris, you're aware of our summer venture program. We approached you and we're honored that you agreed to actually be a mentor and lead the workshop series on leadership in the program. Just for context for the audience, that's a few hours of workshops on this topic specifically. Chris, do you think the summer venture program in general would be a good way for our audience to develop some of these skills and to work towards their goals of getting great firms like McKinsey?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. And it's made for that exact purpose. And I know it might sound like we all have a vested interest in saying it does, but the point is that we say it because we believe it. Things like mentorship, building teams, the guidance that you'll get from these programs, that focus on delivery, so important. It's one of those leadership skills when it comes to being results oriented, is getting something done. The components that are in the summer program are specifically made to create great leaders, and it will show when you're either in an interview, when you're networking, which is the most important thing you'll do before an interview happens. I think that summer program is absolutely geared towards creating great leaders.
Awesome. And yeah, for context, I like not everyone in the audience probably is aware of the summer program, but Harry will introduce it in a bit. I think for now we can open it up to Q&A if you're willing to answer a few questions, Chris.
I would love to, and yeah, I can look at the chat if that's easier for people, or feel free to come off mute and ask. But yeah, make it customized to you, please. Any questions?
All right, amazing. Ask away, guys.
Oh, it's a shy group. That's all right. Oh, we got one. Great. Oh, thanks for sharing. Great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you can send me questions privately as well if that's preferable to others. It can be anonymous.
I'm gonna ask a bold question, actually, Chris. Because
Sure.
we're friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when testing leadership, what can firms ask you as questions?
Great question. I think that, in the past, you could segregate the questions into ones that talked about a positive leadership experience you've had, others that were negative. And I think that those negative questions have largely gone away. It's due to a lot of research that says you don't learn about someone's qualities by probing on the times when they weren't at their best, but rather when they were. So most of the leadership questions are ones where they're asking you to share a time or an experience where you felt at your best. And so what you want to highlight in that is not so much about what you did that made you feel that good, but rather the thinking that went into the actions you ultimately took. And that's really what every PEI story is about, is, let me get into your head and understand the process that led to the results. I'll even say the results aren't as important as the thinking that went into it. If the results weren't as you intended, sometimes that's out of your control, but the thinking is fully under your control. That usually is where they'll go.
Wow.
Great. Oh, we got
Chris.
a nice stream of questions here. Maybe I'll just go through them, Brian. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, great. The key skills McKinsey's looking for, those are leadership, personal impact, entrepreneurial drive, and problem solving. They're, very clear. It's on the recruiting website if you want to learn a bit about each one. Problem solving is tested using the case interview format, while the other three are tested using the FIT. First round interview is 2 interviews, so you'll get a case in each interview, and then you'll get a fit question in each interview testing 2 dimensions. And then in your second round, they'll test the 3rd PEI dimension. So over the course of the 2 rounds, all 4 are tested. How do students get entrepreneurial project experience while still in school as full-time students? Yeah, in any capacity, I think there's opportunities for entrepreneurial skill building. For example, if you're on campus and there's a group you can join, and I don't mean just join as a participant, I mean join in a leadership capacity. When we were reviewing the hundreds of resumes that we'd receive each year during the recruiting time from a single university, the McKinsey training that goes into identifying good entrepreneurs was about people not just being members of groups, but being leaders within that group. So whether it's a treasurer, a VP, a president of a group, make sure that you're in that role as at a full-time school. Starting a program at a school is probably the greatest way to show that you're an entrepreneur. If you're passionate about something, and it doesn't have to be world-changing, if you're a huge fan of chess and there's no chess club, start that. It might seem small, but it shows a real entrepreneurial skill. So I think a lot of opportunities at school. What was HR really looking for in terms of soft skills? Those are them, Mike. I wish I could be more clear. It's entrepreneurial drive, personal impact. They'll ask you the question, if you're maybe getting it, the soft skill is really about the ability to share what's going on in your mind and how that relates to the question that was being asked. About your own entrepreneurial experience. Oh, sure, it's my favorite topic to talk about, Philip. Thanks for that. I started here in Toronto a concept called the Maker Bean Cafe. If some of you are familiar with the Maker movement, it's about laser cutting, 3D printing, using technology for creative projects. I love that world, and I thought that it wasn't easily accessible by people. So I took the cafe culture, which I'm a huge fan of. I drink tons of coffee, and I paired it with this world of 3D printing and laser cutting. So the Maker Bean Cafe has 2 locations in Toronto. People come in and get a drink and design something with us using these tools. So if you're interested, the website is themakerbean.com. What else do we have here? I wonder what the first step is to build a business startup, and what's the key factor? Yeah, I mean, if this was something that everyone agreed on, I think it would be etched in gold somewhere in every city, because it truly is the most difficult thing. But you're right, in my opinion, I'll tell you, I think it starts with data gathering. And what that means really is a very fancy way of saying, just set up a lot of coffee chats with people. And I'm not saying that because I own a cafe and I want more business. I'm saying that because it starts with learning from others, that whole mentorship opportunity. Others have almost certainly done something like what you want to do. And so it could be as simple as, if you're looking for good legal consultation, every small business owner needs that. Set up a chat with a friend who's either in law school, or you may even know a lawyer. Similar, if you know someone that's opened the kind of business that you want to get into, set up a chat with them. I would say the very first step is just get smart. It's the famous expression, you want to learn what you don't know. When you first start, you don't know what you don't know. It means that there are areas that you don't even know that they're missing from your knowledge base. You first want to identify that you don't know about something important and then go from there. And that comes from others. You all tell me if I'm going too long. I love these questions, but
we have room for a few more, I think.
Oh, good. Would you mind commenting on a lateral move from Big Four Consulting to McKinsey? Yeah, absolutely. And I did that. So moving from Accenture to McKinsey, I'll say that it's a rare move. I think once people find a home in a consulting firm, they usually don't leave. It's a lot of work to relearn certain skills, the way a firm operates. There's also even confidentiality issues. Many firms like that big telecom company here in Canada, they serve multiple companies. So it's rare. And so I would say that when it does happen, it's because someone is looking for a new opportunity and brings with them some skills that the new firm will find enticing or interesting. So, the recruiting process, a lot of at the high level is very similar, case and fit conversations, but it's all about really learning the target firm that you're looking to interview with. If I went into my McKinsey interview the same way I did my Accenture interview, I wouldn't have had that McKinsey opportunity. I had to learn about what makes McKinsey tick, what makes it different from Accenture. So yeah, it's really just about getting to know that firm and maybe unlearning some things from the Big Four firms that you had. But I also want to say, if you are with a Big Four firm, that could be an incredible opportunity. There are projects, for example, that companies like Accenture, KPMG, PwC can execute that a company like McKinsey or BCG would really struggle with, at least from a person power, from having enough people. Accenture, at last time I looked, was around 325,000 employees globally. McKinsey, maybe 10% of that. So, real opportunity at those firms. What can first-year students do to prepare themselves for interview success in the future? Oh, you know what? I did have one last thought about that last question. We talked about the Big Four consulting firms, about McKinsey, BCG, and Bain. I do want to put a plug out for a lot of the smaller consulting firms out there. They are quite focused in their area of expertise. If you're passionate about a certain topic, they would love to talk to, I'm sure, everyone on this call. They struggle to attract the kind of talent that an MBB firm would. It's great if that would be in your set as well. But first-year students, yeah, I think, I wouldn't, if you're in first year, I think you're not going to quite be in that window for a summer experience yet. That usually happens in third year if you're in an undergrad program. I think that what it's about here is just gaining relevant experience of some kind. And that doesn't mean necessarily getting a job. That's great if you can in the summer, but there are many other ways to gain experience. So it was a McKinsey senior partner who said to me, and it really stuck with me, is what makes for a great consultant? The answer wasn't a great calculator of numbers or even a great client leader. It was really simple. It was be an interesting person. Being an interesting person means having lots of interests and being able to have a conversation with someone about a random topic that just came up. You can develop that as a first-year student. It's about, reading, about talking to people, exposing yourself to new things. I think I'm jealous. I think all of you have this in front of you. Great. Let's see. How do we build our leadership experience on campus, like being a club exec? Yeah, that's a great way. And the closer you can get to a club that is related to consulting, there's almost certainly a consulting club on campus at the University of Toronto, the MCA, Management Consulting Association. Finding a group like that and trying to step into a leadership position could be, like I said, treasurer. It could also be president. Whatever that role is, get a title. Don't just be a member. And so I think any club would be great. The closer, the better to consulting. the digital initiatives or types of projects McKinsey's been pushing for. Yeah, tons. Certainly, it's a topic that's on every client's mind. Is the digital revolution? I guess to call it a revolution now is a bit old. I think maybe 10 years ago when I started, it was more of a revolution. But McKinsey, I think, saw the potential in digital projects so much that they created a branch of McKinsey, I'm sure you know Mckinsey Digital, which came out of their business technology group. Business technology was the other name that McKinsey had for its tech projects, but as it increasingly became exclusively digital, they rebranded that group, and it's now called Mckinsey Digital. So, the types of projects are everything from, I did a 5-year social media strategy for one of Canada's big 5 banks. Another one was about the electronic records for health keeping at hospitals, ensuring that those are well kept and that privacy is maintained. And then other projects are much more on the ground. For example, a massive server implementation and understanding the large capital requirements and data storage requirements. So yeah, digital projects, absolutely, you'd find no shortage of those.
Sorry to interrupt there, Chris.
No, please. I love these questions, but I'm sure we could talk about them all day.
Yeah. Sorry to our audience, we're running out of time, and we'll have to move on to the next section. But again, thank you so much for being here today, Chris. We're really honored that you could be here, and I personally look forward to working with you further in our actual program.
Can't wait. Thank you. Good.
Thank you so much, Chris. I would rather just keep listening to you and skip my workshop, but I think our students can get something out of mine too.
Yeah, well,
but
that's what the summer
so
program's
much
for, right? Hopefully we can continue this chat then. I can't wait.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again, Chris.
Okay, thanks.